Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and it's that time of the month again where I go over all the books I read in February, and so welcome to my February reading wrap up. So this month I read about 8 books, so it's probably 2 more than the last month, and I had some really good reads, some completely out of my comfort zone. As usual, let's get started with the stats. This month I read 6 fantasies and 2 literary fictions. In total I read 2,848 pages, and I read majority of physical, so 7 were physical books and 1 was a Kindle read. So I am working my way through a lot of my physical TBR right now, which I'm really grateful for. And February was the first month also that I did a TBR prompt, picks my TBR for February, and I ended up reading 4 out of the 5 books. Yay, go me, because I have such terrible time reading TBRs because I'm such a mood reader. So the fact that I read 4 out of 5 is such a great start. I also posted my March TBR where I pick again for my TBR prompt chart, so go ahead and check that out. But to continue on, my average rating was a 4-star, and so it was like above average this month, which I'm really grateful for. So let's get started. The next 3 books I'm going to be talking about was read in my reading vlog for giving authors a second chance. So if you want my in-depth reactions and thoughts, go check out that video, since I'm just going to be doing like a sort of quicker wrap up in this video for these books. But the first book I want to talk about is Silver Cloak by L.K. Stephen. L.K. Stephen also writes under the pen name Laura Stephen, so she wrote Our Infinite Fates, and this one is more of like a higher fantasy version. This one follows a character named Saffron. She unfortunately went through a loss at the beginning of the book caused by their version of a mafia in this world called the Blood Moons. So to get revenge on them, she ends up going and joining in this academy called Silver Cloak Academy, and Silver Cloaks are basically the detectives and the police of this world. In this world, magic is based on a pain and pleasure system. So pleasure fills their well for their magic, and pain is the one that strengthens the potency of their magic. So that's the basis of the world. And so they also have like a religion system where they depend on these augurs where they do prophecies. So at the beginning of the book, we meet Saffron and a bunch of her friends, and they are going through a final assessment prior to graduating from the Silver Cloak Academy. After they finish this assessment, she is basically found to have falsified her information and the things that were required of her to enter the Silver Cloak Academy. And so in return, the commander basically tells her that she has to infiltrate the Blood Moon group in order for her to get her good graces back basically to the Silver Cloak Academy. So she goes to infiltrate, and she ends up having sort of like a friendship relationship with the son of the Kingpin, and so it's sort of like a double agent kind of like story. I really like the magic system. I love how fleshed out it was, but unfortunately I did not end up liking my time with this. I gave L.K. Stevens a second chance because I did not enjoy my time with Our Infinite Fates. That one was like leaving a lot to be desired for me. It didn't give anything in depth, and I feel like this was the same thing with this, where she had such a unique concept. It's a wand-based magic system. We honestly haven't seen a wand-based magic system in a while, ever since like Harry Potter, and so I was so excited to go into this one because I heard so many great things. I just did not have a good time with this. I just felt like there was a point at the beginning where I was getting the sense of the world. I love that once Saffron came across like a certain detail about the world, we would learn about it. I was giving it a chance because I'm like, oh, they're just building the world. It's the first book in a trilogy, I believe. And so I was getting into it. But by the time that 80% came in and she was still interjecting like details about a world that we should have been built out already. And also, if you're interjecting details about world building, it should pertain to the situation at hand. And it wasn't. It was just thrown out there to say like, oh, it was filling up space in the page. And also, I felt like my hand was being held the whole entire time. I felt like I was being told what to feel, being told what to think about a situation or about the romance. Saffron lost a lot of her characteristics as soon as she entered the Blood Moon Academy. I felt like a lot of the stuff she encountered, a lot of like information she discovered in the Blood Moon Academy, she came across too easy. At the beginning of the book, the Kingpin made a whole show about her not betraying the Blood Moons, that she would have to be sort of branded, and that brand would make sure that she would never betray them. And yet she was able to walk around all the time whenever she wanted. She got like a good accommodation. She was fed like these 5-star meals all the time. It was just counteracting everything we were being told, and also there were so many inconsistencies with the characters. And also I felt like the whole entire end of it was such a mess. I felt like we were just throwing stuff on the wall and hoping it'll stick. In Saffron's case, she was hoping that anything she would decide, it would work out. So unfortunately, I ended up giving this a 3.5 2.5 stars just for the fact that I loved how unique the world was. My enjoyment of this whole entire book started slowly going downhill after the first like 200 pages. And so I unfortunately think that Laura Steven, L.K. Steven is just not an author for me, and that's okay, that's fine, and I'm so happy that there's a lot of people who do like this book, but unfortunately I will not be continuing on with the series because I just didn't like anything that was happening in this world. And I'm so devastated by it because I love the uniqueness of the world so much. I love the wand-based concept and also the pain and pleasure system. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get any enjoyment from this, so this was such a dud. Next book I picked up was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I've mentioned in like different videos that I just didn't like that book. I thought Evelyn Hugo was just a terrible character, and so I gave her a second chance by picking up Atmosphere. This follows a character named Joan. We start off with Joan being a teacher in a college where she's the teacher of astronomy and physics. She's the eldest daughter, so she's always taken on the stereotypical eldest daughter role, but unfortunately because of that, no. Sorry, I had to pause. My necklace broke, but I fixed it. It's fine. So anyways, as I was saying, this is following a character named Joan. She begins as a teacher and she finds out that they are recruiting people to join NASA, and they are also including women now. It's told by two different timelines. One timeline is present day, where there's sort of like a problem going on during one of their space mission, and then after that we went back 7 years in the past to figure out how she became friends with all these people. And there were so many different themes in this book that I absolutely loved. I love that it explored how women were treated when they first came into NASA and how there were so many sexist males in this group, especially if you're embarking in a career where it's mainly white male dominated. So it was not only accepting females at the time, but also more diverse people as well. And so she comes in with a bunch of other women, and so it tells about her relationship with her cohorts and how she becomes close with all these people, and even these little instances where she hangs out with them, we find out how in-depth their whole entire story is. And I love how they all got close through this program and had to depend on each other to basically make it through this program. I loved the fact that Taylor Jenkins Reid did not glamorize the life of a astronaut. There's so many dangerous things you can encounter while trying to become a astronaut, and so she didn't glamorize it. She didn't glamorize anything, the hardships that they had to go through in order to train to become one, and the physical feats you had to endure and also overcome in order to become what you want. And also she has the love for her niece as well, and she wants to be ever present for her niece while trying to also fulfill her own dreams. I absolutely love this book. This was my one and only 5 stars of the whole entire month. Suffice it to say that like Taylor Jenkins Reid has been redeemed in my eyes. I always knew she was, because I absolutely loved her writing in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's just the character just didn't get it for me, and also I just didn't like the ending. But this one, I absolutely loved the ending. I loved the whole entire interaction she had with every single person in this book. I found a lot of them frustrating. I found a lot of them pissing me off at points, and the ending was like a cinematic moment, and there are points where your heart breaks, and I did cry because I got attached to these characters. This is what I mean about writing really well written characters that you fall in love with, that you do not need over 500 pages. You can write about really good in-depth characters in a way that you can fall in love with them in less than 300 pages. And the fact that I started tearing up at certain points within the first like 50 or 70 pages, I knew was going to be a 5 stars. So this was my favorite book of the month, and will certainly be one of my top favorites reads of this year, and I can't wait to go on to read more of her work. And then the last book I picked up in that reading vlog was To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. I read When the Moon Hatched when I first started my YouTube channel, and I heard about it from Fantasy Fangirls and they were raving about it, so I picked it up. I didn't enjoy my time with it. Again, I just felt like, again, the female main character, she left a lot to be desired. She was frustrating, and it was like one of those things where also I love the world and also the concept and the uniqueness of how the dragons were portrayed. So I decided to give her another chance by picking up To Bleed a Crystal Bloom. And so this follows a character named Orlaith. She was rescued when she was 2 by a man named Rorden, and she was following sort of like a animal attack, and she was found with all of her family unfortunately unalived. And so Rorden takes care of her and basically takes her to his palace, and her room is sort of in a tower. So this book is kind of like a Rapunzel retelling, a very, very loose retelling, because the tower is honestly the only anything that is like Rapunzel-esque. So we follow her, and she's currently like 21, I believe, in the present day, and she can't really step out of like the whole entire palace. There's a safety line that she puts around herself that like stops her from going into like the villages and everything. She's never left the palace grounds, and she doesn't want to. She has a lot of PTSD that she suffered through when she was found when she was 2, and also she has a lot of nightmares, and she unfortunately kind of like has to sort of take supplements like herbs and stuff that she makes herself to stave off the nightmares, and she has that kind of addiction problem with that. It is insinuated the whole entire time when we are in her POV that she is in love with Warden, despite him being so much older than her. So we follow her just like daily life. She loves to paint rocks. She loves to hang out with her friend who is a mermaid. She's basically has a crush on him, and the mermaid has a crush on her. His name is Kai. She also trains with like one of Warden's like kind of employees, right hand man, I don't know, his name is Baze, and he's also like close to her age. There's like different parts where she's just going everywhere through the different parts of the palace. The first 200 pages, I didn't know what to feel about it because I just didn't like the fact that she was pining over this older man. I knew that it was going to be an age gap kind of romance the whole entire time, but it's so toxic. She acts like she's a 12-year-old, and there are points where she is so immature that he tells her that she's acting like a child, and at the same time in the next scene she's like completely lusting over him and pining over him. I don't know what this whole entire book was about. There was nothing that honestly happened for almost, how many pages was this? 500 pages. If you're wondering, this book is from Waterstone. I saw how pretty it was and decided to get this copy since the whole entire series was getting republished because it became traditionally published. This was such a mess. It was so toxic. I did not like Warden. I hated Orlaith. She was such a 12-year-old, and I understand the point that she was kind of stunted because he never really raised her to deal with her emotions. In fact, he kind of kept her at arm's length the whole entire time while she was growing up. I hesitate trying to go into the next book because I just didn't like how this ended. And the further and further we went towards the ending, the more irritating and insufferable Orlaith became. They're kind of like the couple of this book, but I'm like so flabbergasted on how Sarah's gonna make that happen. Apparently this whole entire series is incomplete and there's only 3 books out. I gave this a 2.75 stars. I was kind of enjoying it at the beginning. There was mentions of like how the world is. There was like a fae, you know, concept in this book too, and how the magic is, and also the scary creatures that are out there. I honestly wish we focused more on the world and not about Orlaith like being stuck in the palace, because 500 pages for her to be doing nothing besides like pining over Warden, I don't know if I'll ever continue. There's a little tiny bit of me that is curious to see what happens. I don't see how you're supposed to root for these 2 characters. I don't even know how you're supposed to root for the female main character. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this book in all honesty. I know I did enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy it. But why is there a part of me that wants to kind of continue just to see what happens? I was so confused by this book. The next book is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This and also another book that I'm going to mention also was filmed in another reading vlog. I read the lowest and highest rated books on my TBR. So this was the lowest rated one. It came in at like 3.69, I believe. And so this follows a character who is the bridegroom. It's told from his POV, and he ends up falling deeply and head over heels in love with a character named Indigo. Before they marry, she basically makes him do a vow saying that he will never look into her past, and obviously he doesn't want to lose her, so he makes that vow. So they get married. They're married for a few years. They go on a whirlwind relationship. She's very rich because she's the heir to the Castañeda line. The Castañeda family is known for like owning a bunch of hotels, and they've like done a lot of business ventures, so they're very rich. And they go all over the world, and then he is also a historian. That's how they end up meeting, because he ends up finding out that her family has sort of like a text that he wants to explore or like examine basically, and once they have that dinner they automatically fall in love. And so unfortunately she gets a call that her grandmother is very sick and is not doing too well, so they end up going back to this little island where her manor is, and that's where he finds out that she had a good friend that she basically grew up with called Azur. There was a mysterious disappearance that happens with her, and he ends up kind of like wanting to find out more because curiosity killed the cat, you know? He's curious basically about the person that he married. He's uncovering like parts of her past now because he is finding out that like Azur was such a huge part of her growth as she was growing up as a little girl, and then it switches to a different perspective, and we get a perspective from Azur from when she was a kid and then growing up as a friend of Indigo. They have like such a fanciful kind of childhood where they believe in fairies and they believe in like magical things. There's points where I see that the house is also a character on its own. It shows like its emotions to Azur, and Azur knows like what pleases the house. The whole entire time I was reading this book, I felt like it was a fever dream because you didn't know what was real and what was not. And there's like a lot of weaving themes of magic in here because, you know, Indigo and Azur grow up believing in fairies, believing at points where they are fairies, and also they discover a part of Indigo's backyard where they go and basically call it the other world, and they have like imaginings of like it being magical and then turning into fairies one day, and then it switches back and forth to the bridegroom. He doesn't have a name, by the way. It's just titled The Bridegroom, where he discovers more parts of Indigo's past. And there's like a lot of creepy stuff that happens in this house, and it's sort of like little horror elements. I ended up giving this book a 3.75. I absolutely love the writing. The book is not that long. It's less than 300 pages. And I did enjoy my time with this. I just feel like I needed a little bit more with the characters and the story. And also I was kind of upset that I kind of guessed what was going to happen in the end. There were some little bits of foreshadowing, at least to me, where I thought that because of the heavy-handedness of it and like the multiple repeats of this certain foreshadowing, I kind of had a feeling that this was going to happen. And I really did like Roshani Chakshi's work, and I want to read more of her other books. I did really enjoy my time with this. Like I said, I just wanted more. I wanted more from the story. I wanted more from the characters, and I feel like it was supposed to be mysterious so that you don't really know what truly happened. There were points where we never got confirmed whether or not like the stuff that they were seeing was real. It's just like what we saw from Azur's perspective and also from the bridegroom's POV as well. But I will be reading more of Roshani's books. And then I ended up picking up the next book, which is my first ever Fredrik Backman book, which is called Anxious People. I always knew that I wanted this to be the first book I ever read by Fredrik Backman because of the fact that I've heard so many amazing things about this book. We follow sort of the story where we start off with these two police officers interrogating these hostages of the situation where a bank robber leaves the bank and ends up getting caught up, and then they end up running into a apartment that the door was open, and so they went inside assuming that they were just gonna hide in there, but they ended up finding that there was a sort of real estate open house tour happening in this apartment, and so it ends up becoming a hostage situation. So it is interspersed between points where it's the interrogation where the police officers are taking turns interviewing these hostages, and everything seems so off because when they start interviewing the first hostage, it just seems so different from like actual real life stuff that would happen. It's so ridiculous the way that they answer the police's questions, and as you go through uncovering more of this story, sometimes Fredrik Backman's like writing has a way of introducing a point of the story, like a story about a bridge, but then he tells you to forget about this bridge, and then all of a sudden he ends up finding a way to tie a story into one of these hostages where they are tied to the certain bridge. And then there's like different things where, you know how that story of like there's 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon? It's sort of like that, where everyone's connected somehow, not directly, but somehow still connected in a way. And so there was a way of introducing the story of not only like the ridiculousness of all these different hostages, but also the story of how it's connecting together. And there are points where Fredrik Backman is like going around and around in a circle and you don't know where he's going to. And then at the end of the chapter, that's when he connects everything, or towards like closer to the end. And you just have like an aha moment. You're like, oh, that's what he was trying to speak about. And now that I get a taste of Fredrik Backman's writing, I absolutely fell in love with it. There are points where he wrote about the human emotions and human conditions, about certain viewpoints or aspects of like the story where he tells how the hostages are feeling a certain way. Despite the ridiculousness of like the way the characters are, he still finds a way to include huge in-depth human emotion that sometimes you can't put into words, but he described it perfectly. He shows how depression is from all these different points of views. It's crazy how everything gets wrapped up at the end, and I fell in love with every single one of these characters despite how ridiculous they were. I don't know, it's so unique the way Fredrik Backman writes. I didn't know what to expect when we got into this book because it's such a quick synopsis of a story about these hostages who is taken captive by this bank robber who is not the best bank robber. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 stars. It was close to 5 stars. I just felt like it was a little bit of a, not necessarily a letdown, it's just we built this up for so long of the book for it to be that kind of ending. I loved every single other bit of it. Just the ending would need a little bit of work, and I was kind of like let down a little bit by the ending, but I still loved it either way, and I can't wait to pick up more of his books. And then in the same vlog that I read, Last Tale of the Flower Bride, I picked up Hazelthorn. This follows a character named Evander. He has been adopted and become a ward of this billionaire named Byron Lennox Hall, so he ends up basically living in the mansion called Hazelthorn. And so he has grown up there since he was like a kid, since he was 10 or younger. And so Lori and him have like a weird relationship because Lori kind of attempted to kill him when they were younger. They've had to be separated for 7 years, and Evander has been locked in his room consistently for 7 years. He has episodes where he kind of blacks out a lot, and so to save him from himself and to save him from hurting people, Byron just locked him in his room and just provided him food and like visits here and there. Unfortunately, in the first chapter, Byron ends up dying and he ends up getting poisoned, so Evander gets super obsessed about finding out the truth behind this mystery. He kind of like, despite everything that happens between him and Lori when they were younger, he has to kind of get help from Lori. And there's sort of like a sentient garden too, and it gets really creepy. It's young adult, but it's like there's a lot of gothic horror elements in here. It's like a little bit gory. This one is a little bit out of my comfort zone because it is horror. The garden gets used as a metaphor to how Evander has been trapped because he doesn't feel like he's normal. He's been forced to try to be normal by Byron, but yet he's not, and he has sort of like an autistic rage, as the author describes it, because he's always had these battles in his head where he doesn't feel normal. He doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't feel right being normal, as like Byron used to tell him. Lori and Evander have like a little subplot of romance here and there, and I thought it was cute. I really did like how they were, and despite every like horror element in this book and like this creepy stuff that happens and the scary stuff that happens, I did find they were like a good break from like the horror elements of it. And I really like the poison elements in there too. I gave it a 4 stars. I did want a little bit more in depth of their relationship, maybe like towards when they were as kids, and I wanted more of a backstory behind that. And there were a couple of elements where I felt like it just wasn't answered, especially the questions I had about like different people that were mentioned in this book. Like it kind of wrapped up really quickly once certain things happened and revealed, but there was like a huge plot twist at the end that I actually really liked. I want to pick up more of C.G. Drew's work. I think Don't Let the Force In is another good book of hers, so I will be picking up that, but I'm going to wait till spooky season. But I really did enjoy my time with this, and I do recommend, especially if you're into gothic and if you want to do a little bit more horror elements without it being too horror, because sometimes I can't stomach that. So it was a really good book. And on to my second to last book. I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and this has been on my shelf for like such a long time. I think it's one of the first books that I picked up when I first started reading again. This follows a night circus, and there's like also a competition that's happening in here too between Celia and Marco. Celia and Marco have been raised by 2 different magicians, and they've been raised the whole entire time to be stronger so that they could beat their opponent. They're basically signed on to be each other's opponents since like they were younger, and so they're both raised by these 2 different individuals, and they're not the most like loving parents ever. They're not there to coddle them, they're not there to be their parent, they're just there to basically raise them to become the magicians that rival each other. And so Celia ends up going to the circus and ends up becoming like the illusionist. The synopsis, it talks about how it's about this rivalry between Celia and Marco and how they end up falling in love through it, but it doesn't necessarily focus on their love story. The whole entire aspect of it is more focused on the circus and how the circus comes about and how people get interactions with the circus, and how there's these people called the Reveres. I'm so sorry about my French pronunciation, but they're basically a group of fans who follow the circus around. So they were like the OG fangirls basically. So like they follow the circus around. The circus is very mysterious. It doesn't ever tell anyone where they're gonna be next. There's so many like different magical, whimsical things that happen in this book. Suffice it to say, I really loved it. There are some reviews that I read where like they didn't feel the love story was so strong. I absolutely loved the love story. And granted, it wasn't like necessarily following them the whole entire time with their love story. It was just more of us observing how they fell in love while being a part of the circus. And you see how their like magic works together while they're being rivals of each other, and how it kind of like has a big part in the circus. And there's so many things I loved about this book. It's so whimsical. I thought this was such a perfect read, and also I would recommend reading this during like spooky season 2 because the last quarter of the book there's like a huge theme that happens on Halloween night. Oh my god, I really want this circus to be actually real. I loved how whimsical and magical everything was, and I love the fact that it wasn't just focused on the love story, that it focused on the well-being of every other person in this whole entire circus, and I fell in love with so many characters, and yet also you don't really know what's happening at the same time. The plot is definitely a slow burn, so don't go into this thinking that it's going to be a fast-paced like fantasy. It's not. It's more like a urban fantasy or like a urban setting with a little bit of magical realism, because the sort of magic is more contained within the circus and also the people who attend the circus and everything. And I gave this a 4.5 stars. It almost was a 5 stars until towards the end. Again, it was another thing similar to Anxious People where we had such a huge build up, and to have the ending sort of be like that was a little bit anticlimactic. That's the word I was trying to look for, anticlimactic. That's the main reason why I couldn't give it a 5 stars, but I absolutely love this book. This book I'm going to want to reread again in the future, and it has become like a top read for me of this year, and I'm so mad at myself for waiting so long to pick up this book because it's been sitting on my shelf. I absolutely love this book and I highly recommend, especially if you had this book on your TBR for so long, pick it up. It's so good, especially if you love slower burn stories and slower burn magic books and things that are like fantastical. And this made me realize how much I love fantasy and the original like foundations of why I love fantasy in the first place. So I highly recommend this book. The last book I ended up picking up, which was like the last couple of days of February, was Roots of Darkness by Demi Winters. This book is the novella that is in between the second and third book of the Ashton series. In the Ashton series, we follow a character named Scylla who ends up having to run away with her life because of like being hunted by the Queen's soldiers, and so she ends up running into this famous like assassin group called the Blood Axe Crew, and so she ends up finding a found family with them, and then now they find that there's a huger enemy at play and huger like problem at works that is like affecting the whole entire country. This whole entire series I praised so many different times because it is the closest series I've ever had where I felt the feeling of reading Throne of Glass. It's a multi-POV book. We do get introduced to more characters, well not necessarily more, a couple new characters in the second book, and then it ends off with a huge cliffhanger, and I was waiting to pick up Roots of Darkness prior to picking up Dawn of the North, which just came out in February. I half listened to it on audio and I read it at the same time physically on my Kindle, and it's a very short book. It's like 200 pages. It doesn't take that long. It follows one of the side characters from the Blood Axe Crew. Her name is Hecla, so she ends up separating from the main people of this group. She ends up taking a few of the Blood Axe Crew towards a different part of the world because they have to go basically figure out what's happening with the world. There's a mist that ends up turning these creatures into like zombie creatures, but she goes off on her little adventure, and that's basically what it's about. I gave this a 4 stars. I love Hecla. She's such a strong side character. She has such a sad backstory. She came from like a very abusive marriage, and in the meantime she also has sort of like a little love story, and even though despite it was 200 pages I felt the chemistry between them, and I'm so happy she's getting like a little love story too, and I like the person that she's like with, so I can't wait to learn more about them in Dawn of the North. That was the last book, but anyways friends, that is it for me. I am probably gonna go and take care of myself right now because I know I probably sound bad. Thank you for watching, and let me know what books you read in the month of February if you made it this far. And if you want more videos like this, like and subscribe. It really does help my channel a lot, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!